I hope you're having a great Saturday afternoon or whenever it is that you watch this video. And I want to welcome all of our new folks to the challenge. If you didn't see my latest video, the one I uploaded this last Friday, you need to watch that because we've kind of changed the challenge around. We've got so many people wanting to get in when the challenge is almost over. We've got like a month and a half left. And we still have people saying, I want to get in on that challenge. So I really felt I had no choice but to create a kind of a challenge package that you can do at any time. You just basically decide to begin, and I give you all the information you need to get you started, and you set a date, and then you go to the future at 6 months past when you began, and you say, that's where my challenge will end, and we'll see where I go in 6 months' time. The idea is to become non-diabetic for sure, and that means in American terms, an A1C less than 6.5, but better than that, we hope that you can become not only non-diabetic, but you can get your A1C into the 5s. We call it the 5s Club around here at Beat Diabetes. And I really believe everybody can get into the 5s Club, even if you're a type 1. I mean, you've got Richard Bernstein, Dr. Bernstein, who keeps his A1C in the 4s, and he's a type 1. So there's no reason a type 1. In fact, some ways, a type 1 can have an easier time of it because they can take the insulin they need. If you're a type 1, you got to take insulin, right? So, but you can take the insulin you need to cover your carbs, but you got to get them low, because if you don't do that, you can get hypos, you can have all kinds of problems trying to get your glucose too low. The reason Dr. Bernstein and others can have low A1Cs and still they don't get hypos, hardly ever, I won't say they never do, but hardly ever, is they eat very low carb, which makes it a whole lot easier process to keep everything running along smoothly. Anyway, welcome to our newbies. Welcome to this challenge, no longer the 2022 challenge for them, but for you that have been with me from February, then yeah, it's the 2022 challenge. I created a web page that has all kinds of information about how this challenge works. It gives the 8 pillars of this challenge to become non-diabetic, and it has links to different resources. So you really need to check that out, even if you've been with us from the beginning and you pretty well have this thing down. I think you do good. So we'll make a link available to the web page. It's on my website, spiritofgrace.org. that will help you understand the challenge. And if you haven't seen the video I posted Friday, we'll have a link to that. Okay, here is a question from someone just entering the challenge. I won't read the entire question. I won't share all that they have to say, but I'll read several points and then respond to them. This individual says, I've had high blood sugar as high as the 400 range, which is extremely high. I don't know what my latest A1C is, so I'm heading into this challenge blind. I do have a question on how many carbs should I be eating every day. I tend to make processed breakfast bowls and then skip lunch or snack on pepperoni. Then I eat a big meal at 5 with a small dessert afterward to satisfy my sweet tooth. Well, first thing you do is you stop eating that dessert. But the idea of satisfying your sweet tooth, there's no reason you cannot do that, because there are all kinds of keto desserts that use stevia, erythritol, monk fruit, various non-sugar sweeteners that don't jack up blood sugar. Why is it that the one sweetener that everybody uses and that is cheapest to get raises your blood sugar like crazy when there are so many others that do not? I don't know the answer to that, but I do know you can still enjoy sweets once in a while, but you can't use sugar to sweeten them. So there are all kinds of keto desserts. If you go to my menu plans, which are on that webpage I described, you can find various keto desserts that are sweet, and you can satisfy your sweet tooth. So the idea that I have to eat sugary foods to satisfy my sweet tooth is just totally wrong. And you need to check out the various keto desserts. I don't recommend eating them every day. I don't think you need to. And I think it's part of the self-discipline you're going to need to build into your life, that you don't eat sweets every day. But you should be able to enjoy them occasionally. And what I recommend on our plan, our challenge plan, is twice a week. 2 meals each week. Friday and Saturday, you can have a dessert. So your weekends, you get to have some fun. Have a keto dessert, but you don't stretch it way out there. You put your keto dessert at the very end of your meal on Friday and Saturday. So it's not like you eat your meal and then you wait 3 or 4 hours and then you have your dessert. Now, later on after the challenge is over, you may do that once or twice. I do it on Saturdays. I do delay my keto dessert, until a little bit later, so Benedict and I can watch a movie and enjoy a dessert. I do that once a week, but my glucose is in good shape, and I've been in the 5s forever. Now it seems like so. I'm not part of this challenge where I'm getting really ruthless. I've already been pretty ruthless with myself for years, but I do allow myself that. Anyway, okay, so they mentioned I'll have a little dessert to satisfy my sweet tooth. Let's get back to the other thing about how many carbs should I eat? And that's a very common question, and it's a perfectly reasonable question. Once you understand, once you get it, that carbs are what drive your blood sugar up. Carbs are what drives all the insulin surging in your body and makes you insulin resistant. Carbs do incredible damage, especially the junk carbs. But after a while, your body can't tell one carb from another. And whether you're eating a big piece of cake or you're eating a baked potato, to your body, there's not much difference. So the question becomes, A, do I give up all carbs? That'd be the easiest. The answer is no, you don't have to. And B, okay, if I don't have to give up all carbs, how many carbs should I give up? What kind of carb limit should I set? I've said it before, I'll say it again, I don't count my carbs. I approximate them once in a while for somebody that asks me, what do you think? What do you do? My guess is about 40 net grams of carbs per day for me. But that's a guess. I've never sat down and precisely nailed it down. And the big reason I haven't is I'm not really on a low carb diet. I'm on a low spike diet. As long as I don't spike too high, I'm happy. And by now, my normal blood sugar is under 100. And if I spike up to 120s or 130s, I'm good. Or 120s especially. If I get into the 130s, I'm concerned. If I get over 140 as a spike, as a peak, after I've had a meal, then I am unhappy and I will not eat that meal again in that form or fashion. So one of the reasons you don't really have to count carbs is you go more by your spikes. But now if you've got daily blood glucose of 200 and something or 300 and something, there's no way you can say, well, I don't want to spike over 140. You're going to be over 200 when you wake up in the morning. You're going to be over 200, any time of the day. So you can't say, well, I'm just not going to spike over 140. You'll always be over 140 until you get it down. So you can't go by that. But what you can do is still do the relative peaking and the relative spiking. So if you're at a daily glucose of 250 and you eat one meal and you barely go up to, let's say, 275, and then you eat another meal and you jump up to 420, well, guess what? Go with the meal that you jump up to 275 and not to the meal that you jump up to 420. So that is the thing. One is check the spikes, the peaks that you get, and you need a glucose meter for that, a glucometer, mic the meter to check that, and you need to be doing that if you can all afford it. If you live in some little village in Africa where you can't even get one, then you'll have to find another means. But for most of us, we can get a glucometer. They're not that expensive. And in many cases, the test strips are not that expensive. But apparently that depends on where you live, because I've had some people leave comments and say that for them, test strips are very expensive. For me, I can get 50 test strips for $20 or less. So I don't find them prohibitively expensive. Another factor as to why you don't have to be too nervous about counting carbs is there are, in my estimation, a lot of free foods. Now, when I say free foods, basically I mean you can eat almost as much of these as you want, and they're not going to jack up your blood sugar very much. Now, I'm not saying these are all zero carbs. It's very difficult to find something that is truly 0 grams of carbs. But they have so few carbs that in practical purposes, they are 0 carbs or close to it. One, of course, is meat. As long as it has no bread coating on it, virtually all meat is not going to jack up your blood sugar much at all. Most meat has next to no carbs at all. There might be a few that may have some. Eggs, same thing. I think they're like 0.6 of 1 gram for 1 egg. So you can essentially eat as many eggs as you want. And that's one of the keys to not being hungry. You say, well, I've had my meal, Dennis, and I'm still hungry. Well, eat another egg. Eat a couple of boiled eggs. Make a bunch of boiled eggs at the beginning of the week. Have 6 or 8 or 10 or a dozen of them. And if you eat a meal and you say, man, I am still hungry, reach into your boiled eggs and have 1 or 2 of those. Salads with low-carb vegetables and, let me repeat, and low-carb dressing. Don't just grab a dressing off the grocery store shelves. You make sure it's a good low-carb, and that means about 1 or 2 grams per couple of tablespoons. And there are ways to make them yourself, which is better still, because if you buy them from the grocery store, almost surely they'll be made with soybean oil or some type of vegetable oil, which is not really good for you. So the best thing is to make it yourself. But I'll have to be honest, I do eat store-bought salad dressings at times, because sometimes it's just flat too easy and it's too difficult to make it yourself. You don't have the time. And time is always a factor for me. I am busy night and day. I'm sometimes up till 1 o'clock or sometimes even as late as 2 working on videos. And then I've got the Bible teaching ministry that I do. I write articles. I'm starting a new podcast. Time is a factor for me. Anyway, but salads with low carbs and low carb dressing is pretty much a free food. Cheese, the block kind, not so much the kind that comes in bags, it's all shredded. That's going to have a few carbs to it, not many. And you can pretty well get away with that as just sprinkle a little over a salad. But in terms of just stuffing yourself with it, the block kind is better. Not that it has 0 carbs, it does have carbs, but not much at all. Chaffles, I love chaffles, and I use them all the time. I eat them all the time. They work in so many ways. I'm going to make a video one of these days just about how amazing it is to use chaffles. They've just been a game changer for me, and there's so many ways you can use them. Various low-carb vegetables, lettuce, cabbage, celery, cauliflower, cucumbers, broccoli, green beans, spinach, green peppers, and there are others. These are all low carb. They're not no carb. They're not 0 carb. They have carbs, but not many. And one of the reasons they're pretty much a free food. It's not that you couldn't build up to eating enough of it that you could get a blood sugar rise, but who pigs out on broccoli? It's easy to pig out and stuff yourself with lasagna or spaghetti or a big chunk of homemade bread. Or donuts. We can pig out on so many things. Big old huge monster baked potatoes. We can pig out. Who pigs out on broccoli? Who pigs out on cauliflower? Who pigs out on salads? Very, very difficult to stuff yourself with a salad. You eat it, you're relatively full, and you're like, I think I've had enough of this. So, number one, these low-carb vegetables and low-carb salads, they don't have many carbs to start with, and 2, it's almost impossible to stuff yourself with them. You'll just get tired of chewing before you ever get around to stuffing yourself. So they're a great choice. Now, let me respond to one more thing this individual said. They said, I'm going into this challenge. I haven't had an A1C. I'm heading into the challenge blind. Well, you really don't have to do that, and here's why. Even if, first of all, it would be good to get an A1C. So I encourage people to do that before you start the challenge so you can compare it. Be good to go to a lab and get an A1C. But number one, not everybody can afford to do that. Number 2, some people are so busy and for whatever reasons, not everybody's going to be able to do an official A1C. Next best thing. Well, there's actually 2 next best things. There are A1C kits you can buy in pharmacies like CVS and Walgreens and even Walmart, I think, would have them. A1C kits you can do at home, and they'll give you usually a pretty accurate answer. But the poor man's A1C is simply to get a glucose meter and test yourself about 5 times over the course of a single day. And I will give you 5 of my preferred times. You don't want to do it all at the same time. You don't want to do 5 days in a row and every day you get your fasting glucose. That wouldn't be a realistic number. What you're wanting is your EAG, your estimated average glucose. So an EAG means you test yourself at different times of the day and then you get an average. So what I would suggest is fasting when you wake up or shortly after you wake up. And then the next test would be an hour after you eat lunch. So you're basically getting your lunchtime peak. Then 3 hours after lunch, 1 hour after dinner, and then just before bedtime, maybe 10:30, 11 p.m. Get 5 different tests over the day at different times, and then get an average. And then you can go to websites that convert your EAG, estimated average glucose, into your A1C. And I just found one from the ADA and ran 3 numbers in it. If you average 121 throughout the day as your glucose number, milligrams per deciliter, and if you do it in millimoles, you can get converters that work for that as well. In fact, the same one, I think you can do millimoles. But 121 milligrams per deciliter, if that's your average, that'll equal a 5.8 A1C, and that would mean pre-diabetic. Not bad. You're in the 5s club. If you're averaging 121 over your day, you test yourself 5 different times throughout the day, and you average 121, you're at 5.8. You're in the 5s club. Now, if you do the same thing, but this time you average 145, that equals a 6.7. According to the American Standard, you're diabetic. So the question is, what is your average glucose throughout the day? Test yourself 5 or 6 times. If you average 200, you're way up there. You're at 8.6. And I don't mean thumbs up for good. I mean thumbs up meaning you're way too high. 8.6 is your A1C if you average 200. And of course, we instinctively know that 200 is way too high. So you don't have to be blind. And you know, a lot of times people say, okay, I've cut my carbs, my glucose levels are down, when I test myself, it's so much better than it was a month ago. Do I really have to wait 2 more months for getting an A1C? Well, yeah, you sort of do with a lab if you want to get a really accurate one. But if you test yourself that day, you've got a pretty good idea of what your A1C is going to be if you stay at that level. Now, hopefully you can improve still, and it'll be better as well. So welcome once again to our new challenge, people. And we hope this is just the beginning of years, God willing, of people finding a way to process this challenge, apply it to their lives, and wait 6 months. My basic idea, my thought is, for most, it won't even take 6 months. Most of you, yeah, I'm talking to you, most of you can probably get your glucose down in 4 months below diabetic levels, below 6.5. Many of you, I would say probably most, can even get into the 5s club in 4 months. Not everybody. And so don't get discouraged if you can, because we all have different things going on in our bodies. We have different histories. Some of you have been severely diabetic for years. Some of you just crossed over the line. So there are no guarantees, obviously. But in my experience, it's more likely than not that if you will go to low-carb eating, time-restricted eating, and apply these 8 pillars of this challenge, it's more likely than not that you will win. You'll get below diabetic of the 6.5. You'll probably get into the 5s in 4, 5, or 6 months. God bless you as you enter into this challenge, and I believe so many of you are going to see victory, and we're going to be hearing from you just as I'm doing almost every day. I'm hearing from people saying, it's happening, it's working for me, and sharing their reports.